Hello, everybody, and welcome to Forever Sports. Rassie Erasmus has named a reduced squad ahead of the greatest rivalry tour, as well as the test against Argentina, and cut back on the squad and released some players back to their franchises for the greatest rivalry tour games, as well as a player on standby. And the group has been cut back to 43 players, with certain key players coming back from injury as well, including the likes of Sacha Feinberg-Mngomezulu, Eben Etzebeth, Kolisi, Handré Pollard, all back in the mix. It is still a very extended squad in terms of a 43-man squad. And bar the long-term injuries, it starts to give you a bit of an idea of exactly what the World Cup squad might be looking like in a year's time. But this is very much the bulk of the players that are going to play against the All Blacks in a month's time. A month today is the first test, and very well timed with regards to that. This squad will appear in Johannesburg on Sunday and will train here for the next week before they depart for Argentina a week later for the test against on the 8th of August. And that will basically be the final opportunity for Rassie Erasmus to test combinations, give players opportunities to play, give some minutes ahead of the greatest rivalry tour. In terms of the players who have gone back to their franchise, they are as follows. Insuku Evan Rose, Andre Hugo Fenter, all the forwards going back to their franchise for the greatest rivalry tour. Then Jaco Williams and Imbros Papia, which is quite a contentious one, also going back to their franchise. And then Ruben van Heerden has been added to a standby list. So those players all back within the unions or on standby. And it's a tough break for them. And I think it's players who I think the Springbok management have just decided didn't take their opportunity during the last few weeks. We know that Evan Lewis has been a player that's come in and out. And whilst I think he had an improved game when he played, he just hasn't seemed to ever be able to impress the Bok management. Imbros Appear will be a very unpopular decision to move back, but it also shows the kind of depth we have within our scrum halves. In terms of the squad, this is what we got, and it's a very powerful squad with a lot of pace within the backline as well. And I think, there's always that balance between wanting to progress towards a faster paced version of the game. I think very cognizant of the fact that the World Cup in Australia is going to be very fast-paced. If you look at the venues for the greatest rivalry tour, 2 tests at altitude in Johannesburg, which will also suit a very fast-paced game. But you've got to start up front. And you look at the props that we have been selected, that is exactly what we have. Thomas Toy, Wilco Louw, Oxenchair, Zach Porthen, Kolisi, Gerard Steenekamp, and Bowen Venter. I mean, all very, very accomplished scrummagers, and some big ball carriers there as well. And I think it'll be very interesting to sort of see how we use this. You've got Oxenchair, who is probably the only one I feel who's kind of, we know, and probably Thomas Tutoy. But those two are probably the only kind of nailed down players in terms of the first test of the All Blacks. Oxenchair will be in the 23. That much we know. Pretty sure Thomas Toy will be in that 23. After that, Bowen Venter had a very good game. Zach Porthen's been immense off the bench. Kolisi sent a huge statement over the weekend with that performance. And then you've got somebody like Gerard Steenekamp, who Don Human really, really rates. And then you've got Wilco Louw, who is the best scrummaging tight head in the world. So the scrum stocks are just stupid, really. And I think that's what the All Blacks will be looking at the squad going, that's what we've got to try and contend with. How they do it, and if they do it, that will be the big question. But that will be the big thing that they'll have to look at. And that's not even including, Jan-Hendrik Wessels, who's listed within the utility forwards. What's very interesting about the squad is looking at how many of these players can play in multiple positions. We don't have a lot of specialists. And that just sort of shows you how the Springbok squad is evolving, and rugby's evolving as well. We are looking at a situation where it is going to be a squad next year for the World Cup with very diverse skill sets. With the squads getting smaller, the World Cup's getting longer, we've got to try and find squads with people who can do multiple different things. And this squad speaks to that. It really does. And that's very, very exciting, from that perspective. So, your out-and-out hookers are Johan Krobelaar and Malcolm Marx. You've obviously got Jan-Hendrik Wessels and Mark Van Staden, who can cover a hooker, which is why we can get away with just sort of 2 hookers. It's a big step forward for Johan Krobelaar. Very lucky, I think, that, like some Marnus van der Merwe is injured. So I think that he potentially might have been ahead. But now he gets the opportunity to really stake a claim. Andre Hugo Venter has dropped out of the squad. If we look at the locks then, Lut Diagi, Eben Etzebeth, Ruan Nokia. I mean, Ruan Nokia can play in the number 7 jersey as well, but 3 out-and-out locks. Good to see Lut and Eben back in the mix. Loose forwards, Paul de Villiers, after being incredible in the last 3 games, is included. Ben Jason Dixon, as well as Cameron Hanekom. Big step forward, Cameron Hanekom as well, to remain within the squad. Similarly for Albert Lowe, a player who was not involved in the initial squad, he has been retained within this, and obviously Jasper Wiese, I'll go to number 8. Utility forwards, Peter Step, the Toy, Franco Marset, Vincent Tuka, Marco Verstaden, Jan Vessel, Kobus Wiese. The big winners there are Vincent Tuka and Kobus Wiese. Shatuka obviously didn't manage to get that much game time. He came on against Scotland and then got that HIA. Kobus Wiese has had some pretty big statement performances with the ball carrying prowess that he has suddenly brought to the mix. And Franco Moss has got all the experience in the world. So it's a very nice mix across the forwards because we can name very different types of packs. We can name, bomb squads of immense big players. If you want to bring a Loert de Jager, a Jan-Hendrik Wessels, Zach Porthen, Volko Lowe, Albert Lowe, Ben J. Sticks, you can bring a big pack on. You can also bring a quick pack on, if you want to bring on players who've got a good turn of pace, and the likes of a Paul de Villiers, going a Zach Porth and Jan Vessels in your sort of front row. So you can kind of change things up. And then the scrum halves, well, they're an interesting bunch, aren't they? Morne van den Berg back in the mix, no Embrose Sapir. It's a step backwards for Embrose Sapir. I just don't think managed to truly convince the Boks in that outing. And it's a huge win for Herschel Yankees, who was out in the cold. And he's now been called back, and they're going to give him the go, and they're going to give him a chance to have a go at basically trying to make that World Cup squad next year. And I think what we're seeing is kind of different types of scrum halves. Morne van den Berg, Kobus Reinach, very, very good tactically wise. Good tactical kicking, defensively very strong. Grant Williams, Herschel Yankees, out and out pace. I mean, Kobus Reinach's also out and out pace, but it's not necessarily what's made him the scrum half he is. He's incredibly quick, but he's not. He's a very good tactical player of the game, in terms of the way he reads the game. Similar to Morne van den Berg, also very tactical in the way he plays the game. So you've got your sort of tactical masterminds, your impact players. Herschel Yankees and Grant Williams, they know their way to the try line. They really speed up play in sort of the second half. So it's a very diverse range, but also similar sort of assets, all quite quick, all good within the box kicking. Obviously, is a very important part of the thing, but they've all got a bit of a point of difference. I think Morne van den Berg, it's his defense. Herschel Yankees, again, pace and his ability to find the try line. Grant Williams is incredible as a ball carrier in terms of the way that he can find space, manipulate space. And I think Kobus Reinach just reads the game very, very well. So it's a very diverse group of scrum halves, and it just shows the scrum half depth that there is no Embrose Sapir, Harshen Pede, Nico Steyn, Imad Khan. They're still Jaden Hendricks, a World Cup winner, not in this mix. There's so many options at 9. It's probably our most blessed position at the moment, which is really interesting. Fly halves, well, Vusi Moyo has been retained, and that's really good from him in terms of development point of view. A part of me, kind of wished that he'd been released back to the Sharks and would face the All Blacks, in the number 10 jersey, get that opportunity. But they obviously see something in him that they want to keep him in and around. So again, looking at the World Cup next year, those are kind of our fly half options at the moment. In Mali, Sacha Feinberg-Mngomezulu, Vusi Moyo, Handré Pollard. Moving forward after the post-World Cup, I think Yaqeen Ahmed will come into the conversation, really hoping that somebody like a Jordan Hendricks will start stepping up. Centres, and this is a position of worry that a lot of people have been saying, because Jesse Kriel had to play all 3 games, but it was because of injuries to Caelan Moodie and Ethan Hooker, who are both within the squad. So Damon Dealende, Andre Estes, and Jesse Kriel are out-and-out centres. Obviously, outside centre options include Ethan Hooker, include Caelan Moodie. Inside centre options will also include a Damian Willemse. And then outside, and utility backs, well, it's pace on pace, isn't it? Kirkley Arendse, Aple Lefassi, Ethan Hooker, Quine Horn, Cheslin Colby, Caelan Moodie, Edward van der Merwe, and Damian Willemse. Edward van der Merwe is somebody who I didn't think quite managed to take the opportunity he got against Scotland. I'm not thinking it's necessarily his chance. I think he what he could get involved in, he did quite well. He chased the ball very hard. His contest was very good, but we didn't get him into space. We didn't get him into opportunities to score tries, which is where he is really lethal. But I think he's shown that he's within the mix over there. A bit of pressure, I think, at the moment on Aple Lefassi. Not had maybe his best couple of games, and I think something like Quine Horn has probably leaped ahead of him. Again, from a utility point of view, the fact that they see him as a potential fly half option, they had no issue bringing him on against Scotland at fly half. Yes, Handré Pollard came on because of the HIA to Ethan Hooker, but the idea was to give Quine Horn 35 minutes against a Scottish side that was contesting with us. So they very much obviously do rate Quine Horn as an option there. I really hope we get to see him at 15 for the Boks as well. We all know that that is his position of strength. Damian Willemse is best player in the world right up over here. But if he's not playing at 15, if he has to move to 12, for example, where I think he's equally as good, is Abrele Fassi our best option at 15, or is Quan Horn our best option at 15? And that's what I'd like to sort of see a bit of, being able to sort of break it up a little bit. In terms of what Rassie Erasmus has said about the squads, he said, we put a lot of thought into how we will manage the entire group of players to give everyone a chance to stake a claim for places in the squad for the Rugby's Greatest Rivalry series. And we decided that splitting the squad into two groups will be best for the Springbok team and the players to play their way into the squad. He said some players are returning from injury and some valuable game time. So depending on how they progress from their injuries during next week's training camp, we will decide who we will take to Argentina, while the other guys in the 43-man squad will remain behind in Johannesburg with a group of coaches and management to begin prepping for the test against New Zealand. This is not a new approach from the Boks. We've often split squads, where we've sent a squad ahead, for example, to New Zealand and kept a squad here. And it's a good approach, because at the end of the day, if players aren't going to play, sometimes there's a certain amount of keeping them fresh, keeping them staying here, keeping them preparing is a better use of their time. Look, in terms of recovery, you don't have to worry about that. You've got 2 weeks between the Argentina test and the first All Blacks test. So you'll have time to recover. But it just means that, you can potentially work on players very specifically on what we want to do for the All Blacks. So that Argentina game will be interesting because it'll be a mix, I think, of players who need game time. Somebody like a Sacha Feinberg-Mngomezulu coming back from injury. You'd think Eben also need a bit of game time. You'd think a Kolisi would want to have a bit of a run out. It'll also be the last chance to try people. So if you want to try Quan Horn at 15, that's potentially an option. I think Damian Willemse has played a lot of rugby, so I don't expect him to travel to Argentina. I don't expect Jesse Creel to travel to Argentina. I'd like to see a Kolisi, though, travel and give him another game. So it's going to be interesting to see how the squad is going to be split up for that trip. And that'll give us a bit of an indication as to who's going to be playing against the All Blacks. Not a definitive, team. It's not going to be like, oh, cool, I'll start at 15 against the All Blacks, going to stay behind. But it will give us a bit of an idea, I think, of players who we want to give a chance to and want to rotate and want to try and get some game time into, as well as players who we want to sort of keep fresh and keep ready for the All Black series. So it's a good squad. I mean, it's a very good squad. It's an incredible squad. You look at the depth over there, and it's mental when you think that somebody like a Quan Horn is our third choice fullback, and he's been phenomenal at a URC level. Damian Willemse is our third option at 12. And, you look at the fly halves, and Vusi Moya stepped up. You've got a Handré Pollard double World Cup winner, Mani Liebach double single World Cup winner. Sacha Feinberg-Mngomezulu, last year was being rated as one of the best fly halves in the world. The prop stocks are mental. So it's a really strong squad. It's a very diverse squad as well in terms of lots of players. You can cover different types of positions, players who have taken the opportunities, like a Paul de Villiers, for example, like a Herschel Yankee. So there's definitely been reward for players who have played well. And players who maybe haven't quite stepped up, or they're going to go back to their franchise and get an opportunity to go and take on the All Blacks and maybe prove a point. And that needs to be the thinking. If you're an Evan Roos, if you're an Embo Sapir and Instituto, go and prove a point against the All Blacks. Go and play well against them. Go and show that you add value, that you are good enough, and get yourself back into the mix as best you can. What are your thoughts about the squad? Let me know down in the comments below. Smash a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel as well. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Steve. I'll chat to you soon.